Greetings and welcome to Talk a Little, Learn a Lot, the American Society of Naval Engineers podcast. I am your host, Stephen Phillips. In this podcast, we will talk a little and learn a lot about naval engineering while inspiring the next generation of STEM professionals. Today, I'm joined by ASNE National Council member Rear Admiral Jim Shannon to learn more about him and his vision for ASNE. Rear Admiral Shannon, Jim, thank you for joining me on the podcast. I look forward to this discussion.
Thanks, Stephen. It's really an honor to be here and to keep the discussion moving forward.
Before we begin, I want to share with the Talk a Little, Learn a Lot audience that ASNE and the Office of Naval Research are supporting the 2024 Naval Science and Technology Symposiums. This is the Combat Systems Symposium and then the Technology, Systems, and Ships Symposium. They will be from December 9th through the 12th at the George Mason University, Arlington, Virginia campus. In recent years, ASNE Combat Systems Symposium has focused on digital engineering concepts and their impact on combat systems, as well as reflected on the Secretary of the Navy's strategic objectives of how we go about expanding our forward presence, enhancing our warfighting readiness, and innovating and modernizing our combat system capability. Given real-world operations and conflicts in both Eastern Europe and the Middle East, ASNE Combat Systems Symposium 2024 will delve into our offensive and defensive weapons that have been used or may be called into service, tactics used to employ those weapons, and how we maintain and sustain those weapons to ensure they are available when needed. The symposium will also look at future weapon capabilities from both the benefits and the challenges perspective. The Technology, Systems, and Ships Symposium will focus on meeting the demand signal. As the CNO has stated, quote, "Our sailors must be the best warfighters in the world with the best systems, weapons, and platforms to ensure we can defeat our adversaries. We will put more players in the field, platforms that are ready, with the right capabilities, weapons, and sustainment, and people who are ready with the right skills, tools, training, and mindset," unquote. All pertinent information on these symposiums can be found at the ASNE website. You can also find them by searching Combat Systems Symposium 2024 in your favorite internet browser, but I will also post a link in the show notes. Well, let me start with a brief introduction. Rear Admiral Jim Shannon was commissioned in 1981 with his classmates from the Naval Academy and began a seagoing career as a surface warfare officer. He commanded USS Astosian, led a major program in PEO integrated warfare systems, and commanded a major command leading the NAVSEA Warfare Center enterprise with close to 20,000 personnel at the time. He was also a deputy commander at NAVSEA and a deputy assistant secretary of the Navy, overseeing international programs. Since retiring from active service in 2016, Jim has served in private industry, continuing his leadership in Navy technology. Jim, why don't you tell the ASNE audience a little bit more about yourself?
Thanks a lot, Stephen. I grew up in San Francisco, city by the bay on the West Coast. And from my house, I could see the bay. And every morning when I went to school, I could see ships anchored out in San Francisco Bay. So early in my life, I was really inspired and attracted to the romance of the sea. And the Naval Academy made it all come true for me. My first 20 years in the Navy, I served on 7 different afloat commands, sailed on many ships, I think twice the number of ships, because one of the commands I served at sea was a destroyer squadron. And early in my career, I really started below the main deck in the engineering spaces, and I had 3 tours as a chief engineer. Eventually, I got topside. I qualified as a tactical action officer. Eventually, the Navy was so kind to give me command at sea. And before my command tour, I applied to be a member of the acquisition workforce. And after command, I became a project leader for the Evolved Sea Sparrow missile. At that time, that was an upgraded missile to the existing NATO Sea Sparrow. And I really thought my career was winding down at that point in the Navy. Um, but what ended up happening is by joining the acquisition workforce, it gave my career a boost. And the significant program that I led that kind of really jumped me forward in my career was the Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter Air Program, known as NIFCA. And that was the second project I led, and it really defined my career and shaped me to this day.
Jim, I always start with the first question that clearly everybody that's a member of ASNE is connected to the organization because of a passion for naval engineering. What is it that connects you to naval engineering? What is it that has brought you to the organization?
Well, I joined ASNE on my first chief engineer tour in 1985 or 1986. I was the chief engineer of the USS Pegasus, which is a hydrofoil and a very novel ship in its design, not a classic Navy ship. But that tour really helped me understand system engineering, and it helped me better understand what I learned in the classroom at the Naval Academy in Annapolis. Um, with NIFCA, I became an early adopter to the idea of family of systems and understanding system engineering across multiple platforms that have to work together. And really today, that's the whole idea of this hybrid fleet of both manned and unmanned platforms, airplanes, submarines, and everything. And understanding how networks bring all that together, what is referred today by many as a family of systems engineering, that's really important, and that's what inspires me and makes me really still feel like I got to stay in the game.
What do you like about ASNE?
I'm a big fan of history, so I really am attracted to the legacy of the society. Knowing that great leaders like Nimitz and King and so many others were active members. That's what inspires me to keep the legacy going forward. It's my connection to the past, and knowing that ASNE keeps trying to evolve and change over time, it's a connection to the future as well.
What ASNE events have you participated in?
While I started out below decks and classic hull mechanical, electrical stuff, really the things that have driven me in the past 20 or plus years has been combat system related. So I've been involved in many combat system symposia, both as a planner for ASNE and as a member of the National Council. This is my second run as a member of the National Council, so hopefully I do better this time than I did last time. But I've attended other events too, based on roles that I've had in the Navy.
Have you ever written for the Naval Engineers Journal?
Yeah, actually twice. Both times I was a co-author, so I didn't write the articles just by myself, but I have been published twice in the journal. One was in 2010, and it was about innovation, and another article was published in 2013, which was about collaboration. And during that period of time, that's when I was in Major Command overseeing the Warfare Center enterprise. I had access to a lot of talent, a lot of engineering, and a lot of the people that worked for me would reach out and say, would you mind co-writing an article where they would bring the technical aspect to the story, and I would bring the operational aspect to the story to make it better. And actually today, I'm actually working still today on writing, co-writing articles for the journal. I think this last journal periodical has an article written with me and Dr. Alex Stimson, one of my colleagues at VTG, where I work today.
I'll have to read that article and maybe bring you on again and talk about that. That's one of the things that I want to do on the podcast is interview authors after they've written the article or as the article's emerging.
That'll be great.
What changes would you like to see for ASNE?
Well, this the society, and I keep stressing the term society, is the American Society of Naval Engineers. It's a thinking organization. So I'd like to see constant change with outreach to meet the needs of the members. Just in the past couple of years, our larger community has really adapted to virtual content. We all lived through the pandemic, and we know we can do that. This podcast is an example of that. It's rich in the ability to share information and get out to a wider audience, a wider base. And we need to continue to venture into these modern networks that bring people together to share ideas. And we need to advertise this outreach better too. And I'd like to help support that in any way because there is a large audience out there. And many people today don't have a tie to somebody who served in the Navy or really understand the role of the Navy. And so the larger story is, what is the Navy doing? Why are they doing it? And then the journal or the ASNE's ability to describe how to make it all happen through engineering is really important. It's a great story.
What aspects or elements of ASNE do you want to preserve?
I think we really need to preserve the professionalism of the society. Professionalism builds trust, it leads to success. There's a very high standard in the American Society of Naval Engineers. You have to prove yourself, and there's a lot of peer reviews. That's what the journal brings. And I think we just got to keep that level of professionalism up.
What are the key challenges that naval engineering is facing?
Well, I think there's a few real key challenges, and I like to explain it this way, based off of what I'm really working on right now, but also my practical experience in the operational Navy. When I was going to sea, when we had to do a mission, we were sometimes in choke points like in the Arabian Gulf or around the world. And sometimes the group commander would give they would give you a task or a mission, and what you have to form is a surface action group. So whenever you're out at sea, at least one commanding officer is in charge of of whatever that mission is. Somebody has to be in charge. So a surface action group known as a SAG brings two ships together, and you may have to control helicopters and you have to talk. And it's actually quite complex, just two ships with maybe one or two airplanes out there. Now, in today's environment, we're talking about having to deal with drones, for example, and having to deal with that kind of threat that brings the problem of mass production to bear in this really tightly constrained area. And so now when you form a SAG, or when you form a surface action group in the future, you're going to have to be able to control not just another ship or a manned airplane, but you're going to have to be able to control unmanned autonomous vehicles in this really tight space. And it's calculus at a higher level because you're integrating all these different systems together. But still you have a person in the loop. You have a man or a woman who's leading this effort, and they're having to deal with artificial intelligence, or they're having to deal with autonomous systems, and they're trying to make sure that the unmanned systems don't crash into each other or with your system. And if you start introducing kinetic live fire, bullets, torpedoes, whatever in that mix, it is a hot and intense atmosphere that we really don't know how to deal with that today. You may see it in movies, you may read about it in a science fiction novel, but it's not something we do today, but we have to get there. And I think that is a key challenge that the engineering force, the people that are professional engineers, are the ones that have to solve that problem.
Yeah, my understanding is the maneuvering in accordance with the international rules of the road. That by itself is a huge challenge, and trying to figure out how to teach the surface platform to maneuver it according with those rules. And there's even a discussion that USVs may have their own category under coal regs. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, where you have to always be careful when you get a bunch of engineers in the room, they start solving the problem before they fully identify what the problem is. They don't necessarily have all the assumptions down or the decision criteria figured out. So you do need to pump the brakes a little bit. You need to really try and understand what are you trying to solve. But as a former operator, I could tell you it's going to be fast and furious, exciting, and the human, the person, has to understand the principles and the engineering of all these things. You can't just let it happen automatically. It's not just about pressing buttons. You have to know how things happen behind, why they work. I mean, even as simple as when I went to sea, I felt really good understanding Archimedes' principle and why ships floated. Okay. That made me feel confident and safe that we were going to be okay in high seas condition. It takes classroom time to understand those kind of things. And then you can operate your systems better when you understand why they work a certain way. And things break all the time. Things break at sea. So you always have to figure out how to fix them.
Do you have a favorite naval engineering story, a story about when something broke and that you ended up fixing it and making sure that things kept going?
Oh, I got hundreds of them, but I think your audience would appreciate this one. I was chief engineer of a destroyer, and Spruance class, the old Spruance class destroyer, which at the time was, the the coolest thing out there. And we were out in fairly calm seas, but there was other ships out there, and out of nowhere we lost power, completely lost power, and we couldn't get the ship started back up. And it was hot, it was dark, and it was quiet. It was scary. I was the chief engineer. I was I think 31 years old. The captain was like calling me up, what's going on down there? And it turned out the only way we were going to be able to restart the ship was we got behind the consoles for the propulsion system and the electrical system. And one of our electricians, or gas turbine electricians, he pulled out the circuit cards one at a time and reseated them. It was just like you do at home. Like, we don't know why this is going to work, but the ones and zeros weren't lining up. And we pulled out every single card in the back of the panels. It took, about 10 minutes. We had flashlights. Everybody, is being real careful about what we're doing. Make sure we didn't break any multi-pin connections. And then slowly and surely started the plant back up. I don't know what happened. This is when people talk about gremlins that are in the system, and the captain wasn't happy that I couldn't give him a good answer why it happened, but it was some kind of stray electron or maybe a ground in the system. But here we are in the middle of the ocean resetting circuit cards, and I know that's something that the sailors of yore, the old days when ships were made of wood and men were made of steel, they never had to deal with that kind of problem.
Amazing. That's a great story.
Yeah.
What do you see as opportunities for investment in naval engineering?
We need to really invest more in understanding network architectures. We have to understand how, not just how architectures work, but probably one of the greatest threats to communication system architectures is how the electromagnetic spectrum can be disrupted. That is probably what keeps most people up at night, because you could think you have complete control of the situation, but an adversary can disrupt your communication systems. And and we have different techniques to be able to address those sorts of things. Of course, there's building communication systems with low probability of intercept or frequency hopping systems and things like that. But we need to figure out how to jump between different bands and ways to be able to counter the threat that disrupts the electromagnetic spectrum. And it's a big problem because our systems today, we rely a lot on satellite technology for precision navigation and timing. All of these things are built off of some kind of communication architecture. The whole Aegis combat system is built off of that, and it's both external to the ship, but even internal to the ship. There's tremendous amount of coordination among systems. The Navy today uses something called CANES, the Consolidated Afloat Network Enterprise System. It's a very complex system built off of an open architecture to help us be able to run our ships internally, where it mixes combat systems and communication systems that make the engineering plants work together. It's a fabulous system, but it's very complex. It always has to be updated. And that is a technology that is, as computers and understanding of bandwidth continues to evolve, where we just need a lot more brain power to invest in that properly.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with the ASNE audience?
I would say, you know, get involved. You know, I, I was really just an average student when I went to school at the Naval Academy. I was not an A student, and I wasn't a B student either. I was more of a CB student. But whatever I learned, I retained. And I was always able to get a little bit more knowledge by just sticking with it and getting better. And then as I matured in the organization, I got involved. Like when I was a young engineer joining ASNE, was that because I was curious. I wanted to understand what was beyond what I was learning just in these basic classrooms. And I think by being very active and listening and being curious, it helped my own ability to be more creative, and my own ideas got better over time as I learned from others and I teamed with other people. I think if you're giving the choice to be a passive participant or being an active participant, you want to choose to be active, and you want with the society, you want to be able to get the information the society could give you, because it's ultimately going to make you smarter. It's going to make you wiser. And so, given the choice of participating in a discussion with publishing articles or just attending symposia, do the latter. Publish something, attend these events, meet interesting people, talk about challenges and what you're trying to do about it. And the more people that do that, the better. And in my own professional life, because I chose to get involved and I took chances early in my career, I believe I've had a richer naval experience, especially in engineering.
Well, thank you, Jim, for taking time to discuss your view of ASNE, thoughts on its future, and on the state of naval engineering. As I said earlier, I hope that we can welcome you back again in the future to talk a little, learn a lot, the podcast of the American Society of Naval Engineers.
Thanks, Stephen. Our Navy rests on the shoulders of those who choose to serve, whether in uniform or as a civilian, or as a member of private industry, or in academia. This ecosystem of thought, openly communicated to friend and foe alike, because our foes are reading the journal as well. It makes our larger community better. And in the end, it's better for mankind to talk than it is to fight. So, but when we're called to fight, we better be ready. And the American Society of Naval Engineers is at the zenith of that calculation.